Cadet Jack Morrison stared at the floating holographic scoreboard and sighed. Dead last. Again. The illuminated rankings flickered mockingly as the names of 37 alien species scrolled past, each with better performance metrics than his own. The name Morrison, Jack Human, pulsed red at the bottom, a digital monument to his inadequacy. Disappointing performance from Earth's finest, as usual, came a rasping voice from behind. Jack didn't need to turn around to recognize Commander Vexthar's distinctive vocal resonance, like gravel in a garbage disposal with a superiority complex. The Krylonian military attaché had made it his personal mission to remind humans of their status as galactic newcomers. "Sir, the obstacle course was designed for beings with 4 to 6 limbs and exoskeletons," Jack replied, keeping his voice steady. "I completed it within human parameters." Vexthar circled around, his 8 feet of scaled blue musculature blocking Jack's view. The Krylonian's secondary arms folded across his lower torso while his primary limbs gesticulated wildly. 4 arms. Must be nice. Human parameters. Vexthar spat the words. "The Galactic Alliance doesn't grade on curves, Cadet. The Vrexley larvae completed the course in half your time, and they don't even have bones yet." Jack resisted, pointing out that the Vrexley larvae could literally ooze through the barriers. This was his 3rd month at the Galactic Military Academy, humanity's first class of cadets accepted after Earth's accidental discovery of faster-than-light travel. Turns out, accidentally creating a wormhole in your planet's orbit was the cosmic equivalent of firing a flare gun in a nature preserve. It got everyone's attention, not all of it welcome. Commander Vexthar called a melodic voice. "The Admiral requests the human cadets' biometric data from today's exercise." Lieutenant Zira floated toward them, her 4 slender arms manipulating a data pad. The Ventusian's lavender skin shimmered slightly as she moved. Jack had always liked Lieutenant Zira. She was one of the few instructors who didn't treat humans like they were one evolutionary step above moss. "More research on human inadequacy," Vexthar snorted. "Tell Admiral Kulna that I'll send a full report on why mammals have no place in elite military units." Zira's large, compound eyes blinked in what Jack had come to recognize as mild annoyance. "The Admiral specifically requested raw data, not your analysis, Commander." As Vexthar stomped away, muttering something about soft species and evolutionary dead ends, Zira gave Jack what he'd learned was a Ventusian smile, a slight vibration of her facial tendrils. "Don't let him discourage you, Cadet Morrison. Some of us recognize that different species have different strengths." Jack nodded gratefully. "Thanks, Lieutenant. I just wish the training equipment wasn't obviously designed for, well, not humans. The Academy has existed for 12,000 years before your species joined," Zira replied. "Change comes slowly to institutions this old, but it does come." As Jack watched her glide away, he couldn't help but wonder if he'd still be alive when that change arrived. At this rate he might not survive the semester. The Academy's combat training chamber was a marvel of alien engineering, a vast hexagonal room with walls, floor and ceiling that could reconfigure to simulate any battlefield environment in the known galaxy. Today it had transformed into the methane swamps of Drelkor's, complete with simulated toxic atmosphere and gravity fluctuations. Jack's environmental suit was already beeping warnings at him. The standard issue equipment, designed for the average galactic recruit, was about as well suited to human physiology as a potato sack with armholes. "Instructor," Jack called, his voice distorted through the external speaker. "The methane concentration is reaching toxic levels for human respiration, even through filtration." Across the swamp, 26 alien cadets were navigating the terrain with varying degrees of success. The Quilnari were practically dancing across the surface tension of the bog, while the Dorn hive cluster had simply merged into a large mass to trudge through. Vexthar's voice crackled through the comm. "Is the human requesting special accommodation again? Perhaps we should send you back to your cradle planet, if our standard exercises are too challenging. Jack gritted his teeth. No sir, just reporting equipment limitations. Noted and ignored, Cadet. Complete the exercise or fail. 30 minutes later, Jack was dragging himself out of the simulated swamp, lungs burning and muscles screaming. The medical readout on his suit showed dangerously elevated heart rate and toxin accumulation. Nothing that would kill him, but enough to make tomorrow extremely unpleasant. Pathetic, Vexthar announced to the assembled cadets. Cadet Morrison has once again demonstrated why humans remain a curiosity rather than an asset to galactic security. Jack removed his helmet, gulping down air that tasted blissfully free of methane. Sir, with respect, the exercise parameters weren't safe for human physiology. If I could suggest some modifications. Vexthar's upper arms spread wide in theatrical disbelief, while his lower ones curled into fists. The enemy doesn't modify their attacks for your comfort, Cadet. No sir, but our own forces typically provide appropriate equipment for. Silence. Vexthar's primary right hand shot out faster than Jack could track, striking him across the face with enough force to snap his head sideways. The training room went quiet. Even the normally chatty Pritzel twins stopped their constant humming. Physical discipline from instructors was uncommon but not forbidden. Different species had different educational traditions after all. Jack felt the sting bloom across his cheek, tasted copper in his mouth. Time seemed to slow as his brain processed what was happening. 1 second. Recognize threat. Adrenaline dumps into bloodstream. 2 seconds. Assess opponent. 4 arms. Superior reach. Likely stronger, but standing flat-footed. 3 seconds. Calculate response. Block follow-up strike. Create distance. Use leverage against larger opponent. 4 seconds. Move. Jack's left arm came up in a tight arc, deflecting Vexthar's arm outward, while his right hand gripped the alien's wrist. One smooth pivot of his hips, utilizing the commander's own momentum, and suddenly 200 pounds of human cadet was no longer in front of the Krylonian. Instead, Jack was behind him, still gripping the outstretched limb, now hyperextended at an angle that Krylonian physiology definitely didn't accommodate. The sound that followed, something between a crack and a squelch, echoed through the training room. Vexthar dropped to his knees, his primary right wrist bent at an angle that would make an anatomy professor wince. Jack, the commander's shriek contained no recognizable words, just pure multitonal agony. Jack released his grip and stepped back, horror dawning as he realized what he'd done. The entire training room stared in shocked silence. Jack said eloquently into the void of quiet. Medical assistance for the commander, please. Explain to me again, Admiral Kulna said, her gelatinous form pulsing with what might have been irritation or indigestion. Jack couldn't tell which. Exactly how a level 1 cadet managed to incapacitate a Krylonian military commander with 4 decades of combat experience. They sat in the Admiral's office, a spherical chamber filled with the nutrient mist that Kulna's species required. Jack's chair seemed to be the only solid object in the room, floating in the center of the sphere. Very dramatic for disciplinary meetings, if a bit hard on the sinuses. It was a reflexive application of human defensive techniques, Admiral. Jack explained for what felt like the 100th time. On Earth it's called Aikido. It uses an opponent's force against them. The Admiral's central eye stalk swiveled toward him. And you didn't consider that assaulting a superior officer might be grounds for immediate expulsion. I didn't assault him, Admiral. He struck me first. I defended myself. The gelatinous form rippled. Commander Vexthar claims he was merely employing standard Krylonian instructional correction by slapping me across the face. The Krylonian educational tradition is physical. The door to the office slid open with a hiss, admitting Lieutenant Zira, who floated in with the grace of a jellyfish riding an ocean current. Admiral, I've reviewed the training room footage, Zira reported, her 4 arms simultaneously manipulating different data streams. Cadet Morrison's account appears accurate. Commander Vexthar initiated physical contact in a manner inconsistent with approved training protocols. Kulna's form darkened slightly. That is inconvenient. The Krylonian Admiralty is demanding the human's expulsion and possible criminal charges. On what grounds? Jack asked, incredulous. Excessive force, dangerous application of unknown combat techniques, and the Admiral paused, making a Krylonian military officer look like, and I quote, a freshly molted Grix larva flopping in digestive fluid. Jack suppressed a smile. I didn't intend to injure the commander. The technique is designed to neutralize threats, not cause harm. Yet you shattered his wrist in 3 places, Kulna pointed out. Human defensive techniques are calibrated for human physiology, Lieutenant Zira interjected. Cadet Morrison couldn't have known that Krylonian wrist joints lacked the flexibility of human ones. The Admiral's form shimmered thoughtfully. Zira, you've spent time studying human combat methodologies, haven't you? Yes, Admiral. They're quite fascinating. Humans have developed thousands of martial art forms despite their physical limitations. Many utilize leverage and momentum rather than raw strength, which explains how a physically inferior species could disable a Krylonian, Kulna mused. Jack bristled at physically inferior, but kept his mouth shut. Admiral, Zira continued, I believe this incident presents an opportunity rather than a problem. If humans possess combat techniques unknown to the Galactic Alliance, shouldn't we be studying them rather than punishing their application? The Admiral was silent for a long moment, her form slowly cycling through various shades of blue and green. Cadet Morrison, she finally said, you are hereby assigned to work with Lieutenant Zira on a comprehensive analysis of human combat techniques and their potential applications in galactic peacekeeping. Jack blinked. So, I'm not expelled? No, Kulna replied, but you will personally deliver my formal apology to Commander Vexthar in the medical bay. And Cadet, try not to break any more of his limbs during your visit. Again, Lieutenant Zira instructed, her 4 arms positioned in a rough approximation of a human fighting stance. Jack moved through the kata for the 5th time, demonstrating the flowing movements of Tai Chi. Around the edges of the training room, various alien scientists and military observers watched with expressions ranging from skepticism to fascination. Remarkable conservation of energy, noted Dr. Plixnar, a Vorbian physiologist, whose own limbs resembled nothing so much as overcooked spaghetti. The human moves continuously but expends minimal resources. But where is the power? Demanded Grake, a massive Duronian weapons instructor, whose species solved most problems by hitting them very hard. I see no strength in these wiggles. Jack finished the form with a slow controlled push of his hands. The strength comes from proper body alignment, weight transfer, and he paused, searching for words that would make sense to aliens, using the planet's gravitational pull to our advantage. This had been his life for the past 2 weeks, demonstrating human martial arts to increasingly curious alien observers. What had started as a disciplinary assignment had evolved into something between a research project and a circus act. Lieutenant Zira floated forward. Cadet Morrison, perhaps a practical demonstration would be more effective. Jack nodded. This part was always fun. Grakel stepped onto the training mat, his 400 pounds of armored hide and muscle making the floor creak. I will test this human technique. Prepare yourself, small one. The objective, Zira explained to the observers, is for Grakel to attempt to push Cadet Morrison out of the circle. The Duronian snorted gray steam from his nostril slits. Objective accepted. Prepare for humiliation, human. Jack settled into a rooted stance, knees slightly bent, weight centered. Grakel charged forward with surprising speed for his mass, all 4 arms extended to shove Jack into next week. At the last possible moment, Jack pivoted slightly, one hand gently guiding Grakel's leading arm, while the other pressed lightly against the alien's midsection. The Duronian's own momentum did the rest. sending him stumbling past Jack and out of the circle. "What sorcery is this?" Grakel bellowed, spinning around with surprising agility. "Physics," Jack replied simply. "You supplied the force, I just directed it." Dr. Plixnar's recording appendage was working overtime. "Fascinating. The human's homeworld gravity, approximately 2.3 times galactic standard, has necessitated the development of movement efficiency we don't see in other species." Another scientist, a hovering collective of gas sacks named Bubbalon, joined in. "Not just gravity, Earth's varied terrain and climate zones created the need for adaptability, and their predator-prey evolutionary history required both fight and flight capabilities." Jack had never thought of humans as particularly special. On Earth, he'd been an average athlete with a background in mixed martial arts. Here, surrounded by beings who could breathe underwater, or lift 10 times their weight, or literally fly, he'd felt distinctly underwhelming. Until now. "There's also endurance," Lieutenant Zira added. "Humans evolved as persistence hunters." Cadet Morrison, "Tell them about human marathon running." "Well," Jack began, slightly uncomfortable with being discussed like a biological specimen, "humans can run for extremely long distances. Our ancestors would chase prey until the animals collapsed from exhaustion." The room filled with sounds of disbelief and revulsion. "You hunted by not stopping?" asked a horrified Kiltari scientist. "Basically, we're not the strongest or fastest, but we can keep going long after most animals need to rest. Good thermal regulation and bipedal efficiency." "Terrifying," whispered someone in the back. Jack shrugged. "It's not that impressive. Any human in decent shape can run 26.2 miles. The translator must have worked correctly because several aliens physically recoiled, and this is an average human capability." Dr. Plixnar asked carefully. "More or less. I'm nothing special by Earth standards." The room went very quiet, and Jack suddenly understood how his ancestors must have felt when they realized they were being watched by wildlife researchers in the field. Admiral Kulna's voice came over the speaker system, breaking the silence. "Lieutenant Zira, bring Cadet Morrison to Conference Room Alpha. The Galactic Defense Council wishes to discuss the human advantage." Commander Vexthar's temporary office aboard the Academy station was a shrine to Krylonian military achievement. Holographic battle displays showed famous victories, weapon racks displayed ceremonial blades, and in a corner somewhat conspicuously, sat a medical regeneration unit still working on his damaged wrist. "The humans have made us look like fools," he snarled to the assembled officers, all members of species with long-standing grievances against Earth's admission to the Galactic Alliance. "One broken wrist hardly constitutes a crisis," remarked Travkor, a Telsian diplomat, whose species had lost exclusive mining rights when humans discovered more efficient extraction methods. "It's not about the wrist." Vexthar slammed his functional fists onto the table. "It's what this represents." A mere human cadet humiliated a senior Krylonian officer. Now they're treating him like some sort of combat genius. The Defense Council is considering incorporating human martial techniques into standard training. The Pax Lori representative chittered nervously. "My sources tell me there's discussion of fast-tracking Earth's full military integration. Apparently, humans have some unique tactical advantages." "Advantages?" Vexthar spat. "They're soft emotional creatures who barely manage to leave their own solar system without destroying themselves. Yet here they are," Travkor noted dryly, "and apparently capable of putting you on your knees with one move." Vexthar's scales darkened with rage. "A lucky accident that will not be repeated. Which brings me to why I've called you here." He activated a holographic display, showing training schedules. "Tomorrow, Cadet Morrison will participate in the lunar survival exercise." "The zero-gravity navigation course?" asked Travkor. "What of it?" Vexthar's mouth split in what approximated a smile.
I've made some modifications to test these supposed human advantages. If their reflexes are truly superior, surely Cadet Morrison can handle a few unexpected challenges. What kind of challenges? The Pax Lori sounded worried. Nothing fatal necessarily. But if the emergency thrusters on his navigation pack were to malfunction at a critical moment, well, Vexthar spread all four hands wide. Space is inherently dangerous. This borders on sabotage, Travkor said carefully. It borders on proper testing, Vexthar corrected. If humans wish to join galactic security forces, they should prove they can handle unexpected dangers. None of the others looked convinced, but none objected either. Anti-human sentiment wasn't uncommon, though few acted on it so directly. And if something goes wrong, asked the Pax Lori. Vexthar shrugged his upper shoulders. A tragic training accident. Regrettable, but not unprecedented. The Krylonian military command will offer condolences and suggest that perhaps humans aren't ready for full integration after all. The next day found Jack floating above the Academy's lunar training facility, a series of jagged craters and obstacles designed to test navigation in low-gravity environments. His suit's heads-up display showed the course path and the positions of the other 5 cadets participating in today's exercise. Remember, Lieutenant Zira's voice came through his comm. This is a navigation exercise, not a race. The objective is precise maneuvering through the designated waypoints. Jack acknowledged and fired his thrusters gently, moving toward the first checkpoint. The sensation of near weightlessness was still novel enough to be enjoyable. He'd done well in previous zero-G training. Human vestibular systems adapted surprisingly well to space. Waypoint 1 cleared, he reported after passing through the first glowing marker. Proceeding to, his suit suddenly lurched violently to the left, thrusters firing at maximum without command. Control, I've got some kind of malfunction, Jack reported, fighting to stabilize himself. Thrusters firing erratically. Attempting remote override, Zira responded, professional calm masking concern. Jack's suit spun faster, the lunar surface and starfield blurring together. Warning alarms blared in his helmet, as the suit's diagnostics registered the malfunction. At this rate, he'd either black out from the spin, or crash into the lunar surface. Think, Morrison, what would work here? His martial arts training kicked in, not the techniques themselves, but the mindset. Center yourself. Work with forces, not against them. Instead of fighting the spin, Jack extended his limbs to slow it, like a figure skater controlling rotation. Then, timing it carefully, he used the erratic thruster bursts to his advantage, channeling their force in the direction he wanted to go. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. He managed to limp toward the second waypoint, using the malfunctioning thrusters, like a bronco rider guides a bucking horse. Cadet Morrison, we're seeing deliberate sabotage signatures in your suit's programming, Zira reported, her voice tight. Can you make it to the emergency shelter at Point Delta? Affirmative, Jack replied, already plotting the least dangerous path. But I might need to get creative. Define creative. Cadet, Jack's suit lurched again, sending him tumbling toward a jagged crater edge. You know how humans sometimes improvise. I'm about to demonstrate. Without waiting for a response, Jack deliberately killed what remained of his suit's power. In the sudden silence of complete system shutdown, he was now just a human in a metal shell, subject only to the moon's gentle gravity and his current momentum. Physics, his old friend. He oriented himself toward the emergency shelter, waited until his tumble brought him facing the right direction, then used his suit's manual emergency oxygen release as an improvised thruster. Newton's third law did the rest, propelling him in roughly the right direction. As he drifted towards safety, Jack couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity. Thousands of years of galactic technology, and he was flying through space using the same principle as a deflating balloon. Sometimes, the oldest solutions were still the best ones. "The evidence is irrefutable," Admiral Kulna stated, her gelatinous form unusually rigid with anger. Commander Vexthar authorized the sabotage of Cadet Morrison's navigation equipment, endangering not only the human but 3 other cadets who were caught in the resulting debris field. The Galactic Academy's disciplinary chamber was packed with representatives from 24 species. The lunar training accident had become a diplomatic incident once the sabotage was discovered. Vexthar stood rigidly at attention, all 4 arms locked at his sides. "I categorically deny these accusations. The equipment malfunction was unfortunate, but not deliberate. We have the coded override sequence traced to your personal authorization," Kulnas countered. "Furthermore, your communication logs show clear intent to, quote, test the human beyond normal parameters." Jack sat quietly beside Lieutenant Zira, still processing the events of the past 24 hours. After his improvised flight to the emergency shelter, he discovered 2 other cadets in danger from debris created by his malfunctioning suit. Without functioning equipment, he'd manually guided them to safety, using techniques that the Academy's training protocols hadn't even considered possible. The Galactic High Commander, a rarely seen precursor, whose actual appearance was hidden within an environmental suit, raised a glowing appendage for silence. "This incident has revealed 2 significant facts," the commander's synthesized voice stated. "First, that lingering anti-human sentiment exists within our ranks. This is unacceptable, and will be addressed." Vexthar's scales paled visibly. "Second," the commander continued, "that human adaptability represents an asset we have gravely underestimated. Cadet Morrison's actions saved 3 lives, using methods that none of our standard protocols anticipated." Jack felt uncomfortable under the sudden attention of the entire chamber. "Therefore," the High Commander's voice resonated, "I am authorizing the creation of a new training division within the Academy. The Human Adaptive Response and Tactics Unit, HART, will develop protocols integrating human problem-solving approaches with our existing methodologies." Murmurs filled the chamber as the implications sank in. "And Cadet Morrison will serve as its first instructor," the commander finished. Jack's jaw dropped. "Sir, I'm still a first-year cadet. A cadet who has demonstrated more practical innovation than many seasoned officers," came the reply. "Sometimes fresh perspectives are exactly what ancient institutions require." The High Commander turned to Vexthar. "As for you, Commander, your new assignment will be cultural integration on Earth. Perhaps spending time among humans will adjust your perspective." The look of horror on Vexthar's face was almost worth all the trouble he'd caused. 2 weeks later, Jack stood before his first class, a mixed group of alien cadets volunteering to learn human combat techniques. Lieutenant Zira floated nearby, officially his supervisor, but practically his partner in this new venture. "Welcome to human adaptive combat," Jack began. "Before we start, I want to clear up some misconceptions. Humans aren't particularly strong, fast or durable by galactic standards." He paced across the training floor, looking at the assembled aliens, some with multiple limbs, some with exoskeletons, some who were basically sentient gas clouds in containment suits. "What humans are is adaptable. We evolved on a high-gravity world, with extreme climate variations, and thousands of predator species. We're not the best at anything, except maybe being okay at everything." Jack picked up a training staff. "Today, we'll start with something simple, how gravity becomes your friend instead of your enemy. And maybe by the end of this course, you'll understand why a species that invented both nuclear missiles and bubble wrap deserves a little respect in this galaxy." A Vexley cadet raised a gelatinous appendage. "Instructor, what is bubble wrap?" Jack grinned. "The greatest stress relief invention in human history. I'll demonstrate after class. Trust me, it'll change your life." As his students took their positions, Jack couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. Humanity had stumbled into the galactic community by accident, but perhaps they had more to offer than anyone, including themselves, had realized. After all, in a universe full of specialized species, being the jack of all trades wasn't such a bad niche to fill.